What? Come on. Even if you get into a top university, people still laugh if you spent an extra year retaking the entrance exams to get in, one of the relatives sneered. No matter how successful she is as a lawyer, if my son is married to someone with a middle school graduate brother, the whole family will be a laughingstock. Just the thought of it gives me chills. I assumed you came from a wealthy family, and that after your parents passed, both siblings had made it through college. Given how impressive Jessica's background was, it was my mistake not to look into her brother. It's honestly embarrassing that he's a middle school graduate. I couldn't believe these were the words of the people who would soon be my dear sisters-in-laws. I never imagined that anyone could say such things. Even later, during the wedding reception, I endured various insults and harassment from this family's relatives. The shock of seeing the nameplate on the table is something I can hardly put into words. Written in red marker, the words "middle school graduate loser" were scrawled messily across it. My assistant Rachel saw it too, and was stunned. She muttered coldly, "If these are the people running that clinic, maybe it wouldn't be such a loss if it went under." At first the groom's family laughed, but as they learned who I was and my current standing, I could see their faces turn visibly pale. My name is Alex Turner, and I'm 37 years old. I work for a medical equipment company run by a friend of my father's. I have a sister named Sophie. Right now, I'm on my way to attend her wedding reception. Sophie, now 27, is marrying a man named Ian. He graduated from medical school and now works as a surgeon at a university hospital. Sophie, as a corporate lawyer for the hospital, began dating Ian after she successfully resolved a case where he had been accused of medical malpractice. The relationship quickly progressed, and they decided to get married. I'll visit Mom and Dad's grave soon to share the news with them. Yes, that's a good idea. I think it's the right thing to do. As I exchanged these words with Sophie, memories of everything since our parents passed away flooded my mind. It was about 20 years ago. Our parents lost their lives in a house fire. At the time, I was a high school sophomore and Sophie was still in elementary school. The sudden loss of our parents turned our lives upside down. Our home burned down in the fire, and we lost our place to live. For a time we stayed with my father's friend Mark, but we decided to move into an apartment before I graduated from high school. Mark had said we could stay until I graduated, but I didn't want to rely on him any longer, so I insisted. Mark tried hard to persuade me to at least finish high school, but I had made up my mind. After a lot of thought, our parents had left us some savings, and we received insurance money that allowed us to cover living expenses for a while. I started working, thanks to a job introduced to me by a man named Nathan. To this day, I'm deeply grateful to Nathan. Living each day with the weight of losing our parents while always worrying about money, I told Sophie that she shouldn't worry about money, and that she should just live as she had before, always trying to keep things bright. When she reached middle school, she found out that I had dropped out of high school to work. Is it really okay for me to go to high school? I mean, you're already working. Shouldn't I start working too after middle school? She started saying things like that. What are you talking about? Why do you think I'm working? I have a responsibility to help you grow up. I'm your big brother. Of course it's my job to look after you. Yeah, but aren't you the only one sacrificing? I wonder if it's okay like this. Don't think of it as a sacrifice, it's fine. I just want you to go to high school and graduate without worrying. Besides, I wasn't that good at school anyway, and Nathan got me a job that I really enjoy. What, really? So I can actually go to high school? Of course, you're incredibly smart. Study as much as you can and make sure you stay the little sister I'm proud of. Okay, I understand, and I'm proud of you too, big brother. After that, Sophie put her whole heart into studying and went on to high school. Maybe because she felt grateful to me, she was always deeply committed to her studies, consistently ranking at the top of her class. Even so, she seemed intent on getting a job after graduation, probably out of consideration for me. I'm going to get a job after I graduate from high school, she declared during the three-way meeting with her teacher, Mr. Thompson, to discuss her future plans. Sophie was firm on this point. Mr. Thompson looked quite surprised. I understand your financial situation, but with grades like Sophie's, she could easily get into a university that offers tuition waivers and scholarships, he encouraged her. I agreed with Mr. Thompson. Don't worry about tuition, why are you so insistent? Mr. Thompson is even offering support, isn't he? Well, it's hard to know you're making sacrifices for me. Don't you have things you want to do? You're putting everything aside just to prioritize me. I can't be the only one who gets to finish high school and then go to college. And even with scholarships, they wouldn't cover everything. I'll cover whatever is missing. My performance at work is being recognized, and my salary is expected to go up soon, so covering your tuition won't be an issue. Look, don't think twice about it. If your grades were only good enough to get into a second-tier college like mine were, even after working hard, I wouldn't be saying all this. But with your current grades, you can get into a great university that'll open up so many more opportunities for you. If it makes you feel better, we can treat whatever I cover as a loan. When you get a good job after graduating, then you can pay me back. Do you know how many years it would take me to get through college? You'd be living on a tight budget all that time. Are you really okay with that? Come on, we've supported each other since we lost mom and dad. There's no reason for you to hold back. If you're willing to go that far, then I'll go to college. Thank you, really thank you, big brother. Though it took some persuasion, Sophie finally agreed to pursue further education. Seeing our conversation, Mr. Thompson discreetly dabbed his eyes with a handkerchief. Sophie declared she would aim for law school at a prestigious university. It was one of the toughest programs to get into, but Sophie faced the pressure head-on and passed the entrance exams on her first try. She graduated with honors, never needing to repeat a course. While in university, she passed the preliminary legal exam and later the bar exam as well. She was so exceptional that I sometimes wondered if we were even related. Then she joined her current law firm after a summer clerkship. Upon passing the exams, they offered her a position without hesitation. Now Sophie is a highly successful attorney. At the time, I didn't understand why she wanted to become a lawyer. It turned out that seeing me struggle with legal paperwork after our parents passed away and we lost our home left her feeling helpless. She wanted to use her knowledge to help others in need, just like we had been. When I first learned of Sophie's motivation, I was truly moved by her thoughtfulness. If she hadn't gone to college, she wouldn't have become the lawyer she is today. I'm incredibly grateful to Mr. Thompson for encouraging her to continue her education, and I'm glad I convinced her. Ian, Sophie's fiancé, also knew about our history. It seems he was drawn to Sophie not only for her skills as a lawyer but also for her sincerity, which led him to ask her out. I've heard a lot about you from Sophie, how you stepped in to protect her after your parents passed away. Oh, please, protect is a bit much. We've simply helped each other along, I replied modestly, though I felt incredibly proud of the woman Sophie had become. I deeply wished for Sophie's happiness with this marriage. I planned to celebrate it wholeheartedly, but reality can be harsh, and one concern weighed on me. I had the opportunity to meet Ian, along with his parents at a formal introduction and face-to-face meeting. However, during that encounter, something happened that made me feel uneasy. The meeting took place at the restaurant of the hotel, where the two of them planned to hold their wedding reception. Ian's father, Dr. Henry Bennett, is also a doctor and runs his own clinic. His name often carries weight in social and professional circles. A man in his early 60s, with sharp features and an intense demeanor, he exuded the air of someone accustomed to authority. I informed Mr. and Mrs. Bennett that I was attending on behalf of our late parents. I've heard about your parents from Ian, Dr. Bennett remarked. It must have been a challenging time for both of you. Yes, we did go through difficult times, but looking back now, it wasn't all bad. Oh my, such a mature perspective for someone so young. I'd expect nothing less from the brother of the accomplished Sophie. No, Sophie has always had it together. Compared to me, she's done so much better. She makes me look inadequate in comparison, I replied honestly. I wasn't just being modest, I genuinely meant it. Sophie truly is the kind of sister where finding a flaw is nearly impossible. Even so, raising Sophie in place of your parents, and supporting her through a top university, your own background, must be quite impressive. Yes, surely that's the case. So, what do you do for a living now? I'm currently working at the company of a friend of my late father's. The moment I answered, the smiles on their faces vanished. And what kind of work do you do there? I mainly handle sales and distribution for medical equipment. Sales and distribution at a medical equipment company. If you don't mind me asking, which university did you attend? I didn't go to university. I joined my current company after dropping out of high school. What? Wait just a moment. When they heard that, the two of them briefly glanced at Ian and Sophie, as if to gauge their reactions. It was just the moment when Ian and Sophie were prompted by the venue staff to preview their wedding outfits, so they were about to head over there. Once the two had left, their expressions turned harsh, and they leaned toward me, closing the distance. Tell me, are you saying you didn't even graduate from high school? Yes, that's right. So, you only have a middle school education? Yes. This is unbelievable. Had we known, we wouldn't have approved of this marriage. Indeed. Even now we should consider halting things and discuss this again as a family. Now hold on. The wedding date has already been announced. Calling it off now would be difficult. Besides, Sophie remains an ideal bride. Yes, she's not the problem here. Excuse me, but what exactly are you trying to say? Don't act like you don't know. You're a huge problem. Look, we run a clinic, and our entire family is well established. Many run businesses or hold senior positions in large corporations. Every single one of them attended a reputable university. It's a basic expectation. Hey, I see. I see you say that response is just so lacking. Don't you understand what we're getting at? I knew they weren't happy with my educational background, but their abrupt change in attitude left me too stunned to respond properly. In our family, it's considered shameful if someone even has to repeat a year to get into a good university. You probably don't understand, but having a questionable academic record is already a disgrace. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. Let me be clear, even someone who has to retake exams to get into a top school would be laughed at if people knew our son married a woman with a middle school graduate brother. Just the thought of the ridicule makes me shudder. I assumed you came from a wealthy family and that both siblings would have attended university, even after losing your parents. I thought Sophie's impeccable background made it unnecessary to investigate you. I never even imagined you'd be a middle school graduate. It's truly embarrassing. The words were so humiliating that I was left speechless. Still, with things this far along, in that case we'll inform the family that Sophie and you are only nominally related, a mere formality, and you must promise never to claim you raised her in place of your parents. Do you understand? What? Don't act so resistant. People like you, once part of the family, always find ways to beg for money or sneak into inheritance plans. I'm sure you'd do something like that. Exactly. Listen closely, this is a warning. You will not loiter around Sophie, nor will you bring up loans or investments to us. I expect you to promise this here and now. If you don't, we'll cut ties immediately, or better yet, have our lawyer ensure you can't get near us. This isn't a threat. Do you understand? I couldn't believe these words were coming from Sophie's future in-laws. I'd never experienced such an insulting encounter. I barely managed to hold back my anger and remain there quietly. If I let Sophie know the humiliation I just endured, it might disrupt her relationship with Ian. They're a perfect match. The last thing I wanted was for their relationship to fall apart. There's no need to worry. I won't ask you or Sophie for any money in any form now or ever. Poof, we'll remember you said that. Any suspicious behavior, and we won't hesitate to take action. But there's one thing I must make clear: Sophie and I have supported each other all these years. No matter your request, I won't cut ties with her. I'm not going to stop seeing her, and I won't compromise on that. What an outrage. This is nothing short of harassment. You should contact a lawyer right away. Just as Mrs. Bennet was about to berate me further, Ian and Sophie returned after checking their wedding attire. The Bennets instantly put on cheerful expressions, as if nothing had happened. From that point on, both the Bennets and I maintained our composure in front of the couple, somehow getting through the interaction. Until the day of the wedding reception, I naturally didn't have any more encounters with the Bennets. I hadn't shared a word with Sophie about what had transpired that day. However, I had told the woman who was accompanying me to the reception about it. Her name is Rachel. She's an important partner to me, both personally and professionally. We plan to marry soon, and she's close to Sophie as well. Sophie had also invited her, so she was attending the reception with me. At first I hadn't intended to tell anyone about the humiliation I experienced with the Bennets. But Rachel quickly sensed something weighing on me. Deep down I think I wanted someone to listen, so I ended up confiding in her. So today's the day you're going to put those horribly rude in-laws in their place, right? She asked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. What? No way. If I did that, it would ruin the ceremony. Besides, I'm not interested in taking any action that would disrupt the day, regardless of what's happened. Oh, what a shame. I thought you brought me along as backup for just that reason. Come on, this isn't some showdown. Ah, boring. Well, they didn't insult me directly, but it still ticks me off. Still, it's Sophie's big day, so I won't do anything too wild. Maybe I was too hasty in sharing this with you, I joked. We looked at each other and laughed. Rachel's fiery spirit sometimes threw me off, but more often than not, she had my back. Having her by my side gave me a sense of security in many ways. When we arrived at the venue, we began looking for the seats reserved for the bride's family. Since Ian is a doctor and Sophie is a lawyer, the wedding was extravagant, with many guests in attendance. Even from across the room, I quickly spotted the Bennets seated at the far end of the groom's family section. I made sure to avoid direct eye contact with them to prevent any unnecessary confrontation. There they are, at the far end. They're looking over here with the most spiteful smiles, Rachel informed me, keeping an eye on the Bennets for me. Figures. Well, if all I have to endure are a few laughs from them, that's fine. The most important thing today is celebrating Sophie and Ian. I don't want to waste a thought on anything trivial. With that, we found Rachel's seat first. Then I looked at the nameplate on the seat beside hers, where I assumed mine would be. What? My mind went blank. Where my name should have been written, there was no sign of it. Instead, scrawled messily in red marker, were the words "middle school graduate loser." No one but the Bennets could have pulled off a childish prank like this. I instinctively shot a glare toward the groom's family section. The Bennets, along with a few nearby family members, were watching me and bursting into laughter. Clearly my academic background had become a source of amusement among the relatives. The Bennets must have set this up in advance, informing everyone and watching to see my reaction as I discovered the nameplate. Their sense of humor was truly revolting. Seeing me freeze momentarily upon reading those words only seemed to make them laugh harder. Mrs. Bennet was even clapping her hands in delight, laughing openly. What awful people. But with the venue bustling with lively conversations and the occasional cheer, no one else seemed to notice the scene at their table. I decided to leave without taking my seat. If I sat there quietly, they'd continue laughing at me endlessly, and who knows, this might just be the start, with more insults lined up. As much as I regretted it, I couldn't endure any more humiliation. Wait, Rachel quickly came after me, grabbing my arm to stop me. You've been holding back all this time just to celebrate Sophie and Ian today, right? Don't forget how Sophie would feel if she noticed you weren't there. Yeah, you're right. If I was going to get angry, I should have done it the first time they insulted me. I promised myself I'd hold it in for Sophie and Ian, but I was about to totally lose it. If you hadn't been here, I'd have stormed out by now. Thank you. Ignoring the sneers and finger pointing from the Bennets, I focused back on the celebration. Before long, the bride and groom, our main stars, entered the room to enthusiastic applause. The guest speeches began soon after, starting with Dr. Smith, the director of Ian's hospital, and then Miss Taylor, the head of Sophie's law firm. We heard from friends and the groom's family members as well. But then, as all the speeches finished, I realized my turn had never come. Sophie had asked me to give a speech, and I prepared it with my whole heart. Even though the groom's family speeches had concluded, none of the staff had come to let me know it was my turn. When I checked with one of the nearby staff, they gave me a surprising response after confirming. It appears that just before the ceremony began, one of the groom's family members requested that the bride's family representative's speech be cancelled, stating it wasn't prepared. So it was removed from the schedule. No way. I'm not falling for such a lousy joke. That's fine. After all, this is just my phone. Why don't you check on your own device, Rachel said calmly. Flustered, Dr. Bennet pulled out his own phone and quickly found my company's page. As he reached the president's introduction with my picture, his face turned pale. No, this has to be some kind of trick. With that, Dr. Bennet stood up, turned his back to us for a moment, and seemed to start talking to someone on his phone. He was likely calling someone at his clinic to confirm if what we said was true. Last month, I had taken on the role of president of this company at the request of a friend of my father's. I had only recently stepped into this position. The daughter of my father's friend is Rachel, the same Rachel who is now my fiancée. This friend, to whom I owe a great debt, had been in poor health for a while and had decided to pass the company to his daughter. He also expressed his wish for me and Rachel to marry. It has been nearly 20 years since I, a middle school graduate, started working at this company. Now I know more about the inner workings here than anyone else. He said he couldn't imagine entrusting his daughter to anyone else but me. I proposed to Rachel, and we decided to marry, determined to build up the company together. Now Rachel and I are essential partners both in life and business. While her official title is secretary, she is, in effect, my co-manager. Her influence in the company is as strong as mine as president. With Rachel speaking so decisively, I knew our company could end its contract with the clinic at any time. The immediate cessation of business with the clinic won't impact our company, Rachel added. Very well, let's proceed with that right away. Wait, you don't need to decide something so crucial here on the spot, do you? Let's take a moment to talk things over calmly, Dr. Bennet pleaded. Oh, that's odd. Weren't you the one who said any further discussions would have to go through lawyers, and that I'd be liable if I spoke too hastily? I'd be too terrified to answer lightly, Rachel responded with an icy smile. Well, how impudent, Mrs. Bennet cut in. Mr. Turner has said he doesn't want to supply products to a clinic run by people like you. Feel free to reject our business if you prefer. Well, I have never heard such rude words from a woman. She's like a monster, Mrs. Bennet snapped. A monster? I think you're the far scarier ones here, Rachel shot back, her tone unwavering. Say something to them, will you? Not enough. You stay out of this. You're only complicating things, Dr. Bennet growled, holding his head in his hands. Dr. Bennet kept shifting his gaze back and forth between me and his family members, genuinely torn between preserving his clinic's success and upholding his family's honor. I couldn't understand the concept of preserving family pride to such an extent. This just won't do. The fact you're a middle school graduate is unacceptable. Our family prides itself on being highly educated, but could we renegotiate the terms to continue the deal? We'd even pay extra for the equipment if we could keep doing business. If we lose this contract, it would be a real issue for us. After all, finding a new business partner isn't easy for either of us, right? Don't you agree? Rachel sighed deeply. This conversation is over. After delivering our current products, we'll be terminating our business relationship with your clinic. You're free to find other suppliers for your medical equipment needs. What? I'm offering this after all, but that's your response, and from someone who didn't even finish high school, Mrs. Bennett muttered in disbelief. Exasperated, I turned away without a word. In that instant, Dr. Bennett snapped. You bastard, he yelled, lunging at me from behind. Caught off guard, I lost my balance and leaned back. It was at that moment. What are you doing? Rachel shouted. I looked back to see that Rachel had deftly blocked his hand, knocked him off balance with the sweep of her leg, and sent him sprawling to the floor. The room fell silent as people turned to see what had happened. Rachel calmly explained to the staff that he'd stumbled in his drunken state. Looking over to the relatives' table, I saw the groom's family wide-eyed and silent, watching us without a word. Without saying anything further, I turned and returned to my seat. Rachel sat next to me, looking as if nothing had happened. The ceremony continued smoothly from there. The staff graciously arranged a last-minute slot for me to give my speech near the end of the event, and the room filled with applause. Seeing the bride and groom's happy faces filled me with emotion. That was such a heartfelt and beautiful speech. It truly showed how much you care for Sophie. Thank you so much for today, Ian said to me afterward. A few days after the wedding, our company officially terminated its contract with the clinic. While the clinic may now struggle with equipment shortages that affect patient care, it's no longer my concern. When Ian learned the truth, he came to me in tears, apologizing for his parents' rudeness. I assured him I had no intention of making a big deal of the matter, and that things between us wouldn't change. Relieved, he went home. Later, however, I heard from Sophie that he'd severed ties with his family. With Sophie's support, Ian had taken legal steps to ensure that any contact from his family would incur penalties. He'd learned from his relatives' own overuse of legal threats and swiftly turned the tables on them. To be honest, I was truly relieved to hear that Sophie and her husband had cut ties with those relatives. Next up is you two. Yes, you and Rachel deserve happiness too, Big Brother Sophie said with a grin. Right, I can't wait to see Rachel as a bride. She's going to look stunning. Lately I've been getting more and more gentle nudges from my sister and her husband, urging me to marry Rachel. Rachel and I exchanged a smile, saying, one of these days, grateful for this happiness, I threw myself into my work with renewed dedication today. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales of resilience and determination.